Hello and welcome to this edition of TZM Global Radio. I'm your host for today, James Phillips, or Jim Phillips, from the UK chapter of the Zeitgeist Movement and TZM Education. I'd like to start off by saying apologies for the lack of radio shows in recent weeks. I've had a pretty busy Christmas and I'm trying to fly the flag for this show and keep it going by myself pretty much at the moment, just whilst other hosts are otherwise engaged and busy and what have you. So, which is exactly what happened to me over the festive period. So, anyway, what have I got lined up for you on today's show? Well, eventually I'm going to be reading the next article from TZM Education, the section Minds in the Making, and that's entitled The Impact of Human Nature on Social and Educational Approach. But first of all, a few items of news for the movement. Z-Day Global has been announced. It's taking place in Berlin, in Germany, on March the 14th of this year, Saturday, March the 14th. I'm going to just briefly read something that Gilbert posted to our Facebook page as a sort of announcement of this. Preliminary speaker list is now posted on the event page. Details on Z-Day main event in Berlin are targeted for release on Monday of that week, so that's just passed. At this point in time, a venue is secured for about 300 seats. This means, being a main event in Central Europe, that there is a chance tickets may sell out quickly. Whilst we explore options of increased seating, it does look like we will use this venue. If we make the info release, we'll post the ticket page 24 hours later. So do make sure you try to get your tickets. All efforts are being made to make sure Z-Day weekend and Z-Day, in order to have a social interaction with other movement members and supporters. Social events on Friday and Saturday evening are also being scheduled. That preliminary list of speakers is Peter Joseph, who I'm sure you're all aware of who he is, Ben McLeish from TZM UK lecture team, Gilbert Ismail from Global Chapters Administration, myself, Frankie Muller from TZM Germany, and Stefan Kengen from TZM Denmark. The emphasis, as it's sort of alluded to in that statement, is on interaction and also on the need to get out and be more proactive, perhaps in educational terms. That's certainly what my talk is going to be on. It's going to be on why going into schools is a worthwhile and decent approach for the movement, perhaps even above and beyond any of our other portals or channels of activism. That's not to say that we should stop doing those, but just to say maybe how much we've actually undervalued what I have been talking about, which is going into schools and talking to kids, and perhaps how much we've undervalued that as a necessary, strategic and efficient way to go about changing the values of global society towards moving towards a socio-economic model capable of meeting human need in a sustainable manner and actually solve social and human problems in a more effective way. Also, we are piecing together a London event as well. That won't go ahead on the Z-Day weekend because we weren't able to secure a venue. So we're looking somewhere more towards April time. And for that event, we're hopefully getting the Equality Trust, positive money, and we've already confirmed the London Futurists as coming along. And really, those are to give the three main or core talks as to what is intrinsically and inherently wrong with our current socio-economic system, that being the effects of income inequality on social health, the fractional reserve banking in particular, but I'll expand on that point to say that the monetary system, the problems with the use of a monetary system, if your aim is to be sustainable and solve human and environmental problems. And the third talk from the London Futurists would be on technological unemployment, which is a major threat for the future of the job market on which our entire socio-economic system actually relies. Then I will give a talk later on the NLRBE and why we advocate it, why it's still relevant, why it's still important. that's what I want to come on to just briefly now, is that and this is only a feeling, this is only conjecture, but I tend to feel like maybe we're getting that sort of 7-year itch that you get in all relationships, where we're coming to a time where we've had to continually look at the degradation and the breakdown of the environment and society and wealth imbalance, and still staring in the face of making the same mistakes over and over again in the world, can get you quite jaded. I certainly know that I've felt that way at certain times. And I suppose the London event really, in past we've expanded it towards bringing in guest speakers, and I still advocate that, and we'll still do that in our monthly event. But I feel like this year is important to just get back to basics and focus on why the problems haven't gone away. The reasons that the Zeitgeist movement still exist are still the same reasons, and many people out there have no idea of what we advocate, why we advocate it. They've got no idea of the sorts of issues that we talk about, and no idea about the technology that exists to solve human problems. And that's really the core emphasis here, is that we might be fed up with talking about these things, and when you talk about them enough, you think, well, everybody knows. It's a big world out there, guys. And many people just simply do not know. In fact, I would argue most. At least in the sense of certainly the technology that's available. Most people definitely don't know about that. Now, what I wanted to do is just read a couple of brief posts to do with some of the core issues that we talk about. Starting off with a recent report from Oxfam on wealth inequality. Having it all and wanting more, research paper published today by Oxfam shows that the richest 1% have seen their share of global wealth increase from 44% in 2009 to 48% in 2014, and at this rate will be more than 50% in 2016. Members of this global elite had an average wealth of £2.7 million per adult in 2014. Of the remaining 52% of the global wealth, almost all, 46%, is owned by the rest of the richest fifth of the world's population. The other 80% share just 5.5% and had an average wealth of $3,851 per adult. That's 1/700th of the average wealth of the 1%. Winnie Byanyima, Executive Director of Oxfam International, said, "Do we really want to live in a world where the 1% own more than the rest of us combined? The scale of global inequality is quite simply staggering, and despite the issues shooting up the global agenda, the gap between the richest and the rest is widening fast." And I would add another statistic to that the 85 richest people on this planet have more money than the bottom 3.5 billion. Now, when facing statistics of this nature and growing in stature, surely people can finally turn around and say, well, the system we use clearly has to be questioned, but no, it can be tinkered with, it can be changed once again, and we need to make this political change in that. These political changes and economic changes are all well and good, and I'm sure in transition they're very worthwhile, but if you cannot stare in the face of 1% of the human population owning more than half of the planet's wealth and say, well, then there you go, that's system failure then, because an economy is somehow supposed to meet at least the majority of human needs adequately, isn't it? That's what it's supposed to do. If that's what it's supposed to do, and 50% is in the hands of 50% of the world's wealth is in the hands of 1%, and you still can't see that there's a system failure on your hands, it just boggles the mind. So, moving on from that onto the issue of environmental degradation, there's a recent article from The Guardian entitled "Rate of Environmental Degradation Puts Life on Earth at Risk, Say Scientists." Humans are eating away at our own life support systems at a rate unseen in the past 10,000 years, two new research papers say. Humans are eating away at our own life support systems at a rate unseen in the past 10,000 years by degrading land and freshwater systems, emitting greenhouse gases and releasing vast amounts of agricultural chemicals into the environment, new research has found. Two major new studies by an international team of researchers have pinpointed the key factors that ensure a livable planet for humans with stark results. Of 9 worldwide processes that underpin life on Earth, 4 have exceeded safe levels. Human-driven climate change, loss of biosphere integrity, land system change, and the high level of phosphorus and nitrogen flowing into the oceans due to fertilizer use. Researchers spent 5 years identifying these core components of a planet suitable for human life, using the long-term average state of each measure to provide a baseline for the analysis. They found that the changes of the last 60 years are unprecedented in the previous 10,000 years, a period in which the world has had a relatively stable climate and human civilization has advanced significantly. Carbon dioxide levels at 395.5 parts per million are at historic highs, while a loss of biosphere integrity is resulting in species becoming extinct at a rate more than 100 times faster than the previous norm. Since 1950, urban populations have increased 7-fold. Primary energy use has soared by a factor of 5, while the amount of fertilizer used is now 8 times higher. The amount of nitrogen entering the oceans has quadrupled. All of these changes are shifting Earth into a new state that is becoming less hospitable to human life, researchers said. These indicators have shot up since 1950, and there are no signs that they are slowing down, said Professor Will Stefan of the Australian National University and Stockholm Resilience Centre. Stefan is the lead author on both of the studies. When economic systems went into overdrive, there was a massive increase in resource use and pollution. It used to be confined to local and regional areas, but we're now seeing this occurring on a global scale. These changes are down to human activity, not natural variability. Stefan said direct human influence upon the land was contributing to a loss in pollination and disruption in the provision of nutrients and fresh water. We are clearing land, we are degrading land, we introduce feral animals and take the top predators out. We change the marine ecosystem by overfishing. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, he said. That direct impact on the land is the most important factor right now, even more than climate change. There are large variations in the conditions around the world according to the research. For example, land clearing is now concentrated in tropical areas such as Indonesia and in the Amazon, with the practice reversed in parts of Europe, but the overall picture is one of deterioration at a rapid rate. It's fairly safe to say that we haven't seen conditions in the past similar to ones we see today, and there is strong evidence that there are tipping points we don't want to cross. They are, rather, tipping points that we don't want to cross. If the Earth is going to move to a warmer state, 5 to 6 degrees centigrade warmer with no ice caps, it will do so, and that won't be good for large mammals like us. People say the world is robust, and that's true. There'll be life on Earth, but the Earth won't be robust for us. Some people say we can adapt due to technology, but that's a belief system. It's not based on fact. There is no convincing evidence that a large mammal with a core body temperature of 37 degrees will be able to evolve that quickly. Insects can, but humans can't, and that's the problem. Stefan said the research showed the economic system was fundamentally flawed, as it ignored critically important life support systems. It's clear the economic system, he says, is driving us towards an unsustainable future, and people of my daughter's generation will find it increasingly hard to survive, he said. History has shown us that civilizations have risen, stuck to their core values, and then collapsed because they didn't change. That's where we are today. The two studies published in Science and Anthropocene Review featured the work of scientists from countries including the US, Sweden, Germany, and India. The findings will be presented in 7 seminars at the World Economic Forum in Davos, which takes place between the 21st and 25th of January. That concludes the article. Believe it or not, I actually think there's some good news in there, which a mainstream scientist is actually starting to lay the blame clearly at the system's doorstep for a change. Fair enough, he doesn't actually say of what we propose, a natural law resource-based economy, but he does cite that the economic system is fundamentally flawed. As far as I'm concerned, given the breadth of the destruction I've just read out, I think that's the only thing you can say. At which point do we have to get to where we realise and see the elephant in the room? Would be my question. Granted, perhaps this has just been published, and maybe there'll be additions to this. Maybe some of them will even play down some of the estimations here. But it's gone past the point of common knowledge that we are destroying our ecosystem with the pursuit of still more of that lovely oxymoron called economic growth, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. On the flip side of it, we are making some good news. Would be that in Japan, the world's largest indoor farm is showing itself to be 100 times more productive than current farming methods. It says here the statistics for this incredibly successful indoor farming endeavour in Japan are staggering. 25,000 square feet producing 10,000 heads of lettuce per day, which is 100 times more than traditional methods, 40% less power, 80% less food waste, 99% less water than outdoor fields. And new facilities are being announced under construction in Hong Kong, Mongolia, Russia and mainland China. So there's some positive news going on there, at least in the terms of showcasing what is actually possible. Now, in the article that I previously read, it cited that technology will save us. It was talking, I think, in the context of a world that is greatly increased in temperature and much less hospitable for land mammals such as ourselves. But these technological solutions do exist, and if the right economic foundation based on something tangible, something that can be tested, something that can be agreed upon, something that can be collaborated around by the world community, then the implementation based on that platform of technology very much could provide and access abundance sustainably for the world's population, as we've gone through in our other materials. Further news on the technology front: the world's first 3D printed apartment building constructed in China. A Chinese company has successfully 3D printed a 5-story apartment building and a 1,100 square meter villa from a special print material based on renewables, I believe. I'll just briefly read a couple of excerpts from this article. While architectural firms compete with their designs for 3D printed dwellings, one company in China has quietly been setting about getting the job done. In March of last year, company Winsun claimed to have printed 10 houses in 24 hours using a proprietary 3D printer that uses a mixture of ground construction and industrial waste, such as glass and tailings, around a base of quick-drying cement mixed with a special hardening agent. And you can check out that article online as well. I won't go much further than that, other than to say it's very promising that they're using industrial waste to build up some of these things, which also showcases, once again, if you look at it through the lens of a new economic platform, how many of the old structures that we're using, or dilapidated structures, the resources from which could be broken back down to build new, more sustainable model of housing for the future. So the solutions are there. What is not there is our frankly retarded economic system, if economic is what we should actually be calling it. Anti-economic would be much more accurate. With that in mind, the London event will be really refocusing, if you will, people who are interested in what we have to say on why we say what we say and why we do what we do. And we're going to be getting our street teams a lot more active, in the terms of we're going to be now trying to aim for a north, south, east, west and central London based street team crew, and the same goes for TZM Education, but of course that's a global initiative for the movement. If we act in concert together, then our numbers could be very, very effective. What we need is to have a plan, a strategy, a strategic effort. We need to analyze where our efforts are best spent and go for it. If that says that, for instance, and I'm just saying for instance, if that says that endless hours of posting on your personal Facebook profile with only 1 or 2 likes here or there and not many views is not a particularly efficient and effective way of spreading this train of thought, then may I suggest, if you support a movement that advocates a strategic and efficient approach in general to planetary management, then you should probably apply that to your own activism. To me, that makes coherent sense. That's once again, it's not to say that social media isn't effective. I'm just using that as a particular example, and it could easily happen with me if it was shown that what I'm doing in schools is very ineffective compared to me spending all day on Facebook. Then I'll spend all day on Facebook. But whatever it is, we should be willing to adjust our behavior so that we make sure that we're actually doing our very utmost when we do get the time in our busy lives to spread this train of thought, to do it effectively. So we'll be talking about our projects as a movement. We will be opening the door to other organisations as well in our very extended, hopefully extended Q&A session at our London event, for the reason that if people, for whatever reason, don't feel that the Zeitgeist movement explicitly is for them, then they can at least find some other organisation or some other slot to fit in that's right for them. I personally think that the Equality Trust, Positive Money, the London Futurists, and many other organisations, CAS, the case for unconditional universal basic income, anybody doing any of these things, as far as I'm concerned, is pushing in the right direction, even if they don't for now advocate the NLRBE. My argument is that whilst they're doing what they're doing, that they should have the long-term vision in mind, and they should have a concrete idea of where they're going, which is what I have done in previous events with these different organisations. I hope that sort of brings into sharp focus why we're doing what we're doing on London Z-Day, and the talk, and a sort of a taster, if you will, of some of the things that I will be talking about in Berlin. What I want to move on to now is this article, The Impact of Human Nature on Social and Educational Approach, which you can find on the website at tzmeducation.org in the section Minds in the Making. It's the second article. So, what is our nature? Are we naturally greedy and competitive, or empathic and collaborative? Many philosophical, religious, political, and economic writings and systems have been crafted according to the prevailing thinking at the time regarding the human condition, with profound implications for educational approach and overall societal structure. So when deciphering the best approaches to use in structuring educational and social policy, it seems that having a valid, evidence-based understanding of this issue is essential before deciding on the best course of action. Nature versus nurture. Understanding the human condition has very often been cast in the light of an either-or approach. We are either driven by prescribed nature set at birth, or we are blank slates to be shaped by the surrounding culture and environment. So which is it? Nature or nurture? Perhaps the most pertinent question is, why does it have to be one or the other, and what exactly does the most up-to-date evidence on the subject have to say on the matter? Perhaps a short way to sum up the general scientific consensus on this long-standing debate between nature and nurture is that it is in fact nature via nurture, not versus. Recent developments in the neurological, behavioural and social sciences now show that nurture plays a major role in the factors which shape human behaviour. This is not to say that one's environment is the only factor, but rather that a complex interaction of our unique environmental cultural experience interacting with and influencing our genes is what makes up the person we are. Any study carried out on human behaviour must take into account all possible aspects and ramifications of environmental influence, which can often be subtle, profound, wide-reaching and complex. This is, however, very often not the case, with the emphasis instead revolving around individual responsibility alone, rather than taking a proper account of the conditions in which said individual was raised. The general outline of this issue is covered in greater detail in the first 40 minutes of the documentary Zeitgeist Moving Forward, which should help to give a far clearer picture regarding the human condition, as well as a more in-depth understanding of the NLRBE if viewed in its entirety. For a more detailed exploration of the subject of human behaviour, the following lecture series from Robert Sapolsky is highly recommended, and that's entitled Introduction to Human Behavioural Biology, the first lecture. That's on the site here at TZM Education, but obviously I recommend watching that whole series. And expanded upon in greater detail by Dr. Gabor Mate in the following joint event between himself and the Zeitgeist Movement. That's entitled Gabor Mate and TZM Vancouver, What Promotes Positive Health. For more information on the nature versus nurture discussion, please see the following lecture by Dr. Gregory Forbes. If you type in nature or nurture, how do genes, environment and free will affect human behaviour, and type in Dr. Gregory Forbes, you should be able to find that. The following lecture by Robert Sapolsky sums up some other interesting points regarding the uniqueness of human behaviour. The uniqueness of humans, that's entitled. Culture memes. Unfortunately, the results of these fairly recent findings do not appear to be common knowledge in the current zeitgeist. The erroneous assumptions based around the now thoroughly debunked notion of social Darwinism still lie at the heart of much of our indifference and subsequent inaction towards the necessary changes that need to be made to our social system in order to start to address issues such as poverty, inequality, environmental degradation, and war. This continuation of punitive coercion based on these outdated notions should be understandable in a sense, as it is far easier psychologically to use these socially Darwinistic assumptions to put the current dramatic state of these issues down to part of our unalterable human nature rather than our collective responsibility in addressing the overall structure of our social system for at least 3 reasons. These can be described by using the phrase culture meme, that being an idea, behaviour or style that spreads from one person to another within a culture. Culture meme 1. We're alpha male, dominant and competitive by nature, so why bother changing society to anything other than that general arrangement, as it will only revert to hierarchy anyway? This assumption often contains another fallacious argument, with it being alpha male dominance is universal across primates and by extension an unavoidable trait of human society. As well as employing an outright fallacy in the shape of an appeal to nature as an argument, this assumption seems to be baseless in terms of viable evidence to back it up as well. In the case of one of our fellow primates, the bonobo for example, such aggressive alpha male behaviour is virtually non-existent, as is outlined in the following documentary. That's entitled Bonobo Ape, Our Closest Relative. Moreover, the aggressive alpha-dominant behaviour commonplace in chimp troops can be shown to be overcome given the right environmental stimulus. Along with outlining this point, the following documentary also shows the important effects that stress has on the overall psychological and physiological health of primates in general. That's Stress, Portrait of a Killer. Further evidence of environmentally driven links to aberrant behaviour can be found in the Merva-Fowl study, which found a strong link between a rise in unemployment and crime across a wide and diverse range of populations around the world, showing a strong correlation between scarcity, stress, and the related aberrant behaviour that comes with it. And for that, you could go to see the Zeitgeist Movement Orientation presentation from 2009, go to 10 minutes 18 to see the information on this study, or for a concise understanding of the reasoning behind the advocation of an NLRBE, watch the orientation in full. Although I would add to that getting our most recent orientational book, TZM Defined, and giving that a read, it gives a much more broad perspective in that particular orientation guide. Further evidence outlining the negative effects of living in a highly stratified social environment can be found in the work of the Equality Trust. These studies produced by the Trust clearly show that if you live in a developed but more financially unequal society, then whether rich or poor, your health is more likely to be negatively impacted compared with other developed but more financially equal ones. This is outlined by Richard Wilkinson in the following TED Talk. That talk is entitled How Economic Inequality Harms Societies. Given this volume of evidence, it seems hard then to claim that such dominance-based behaviours are part of our unalterable human nature. Instead, it appears that such tendencies are displayed more prominently when these behaviours are rewarded and reinforced in the surrounding environment. These points noted, let's entertain the notion that this assumption about alpha male dominance being an inert and unalterable trait in human beings is true for a moment. What then would be the most appropriate response in the orientation of our social structure given such inbuilt behavioural tendencies? Should it be to accept and support a system that actively rewards and encourages this obviously detrimental behaviour? Or should we instead attempt to make sure we have a socio-economic system which actively seeks to mitigate for this condition as much as possible by eradicating the means by which to exert such dominance? Group conformity. Our identities are woven into the fabric of our cultural behaviour and social nuances in the most subtle, profound and often unappreciated ways. To go against the grain will very often ostracize you from the group, something that can be a highly detrimental act in evolutionary terms, as it will very likely decrease your chances of survival. Our susceptibility and conformity to group behaviour, as well as our potential obedience to authority, is well displayed in the Ash and Stanley Milgram experiments detailed in the following links. Perhaps these examples could be shown to older students in schools to highlight the need to assert one's personal integrity in the face of the peer pressure present in most modern school environments. They may also help to highlight the importance that should be given to questioning illegitimate authority and the elevation of critical thinking as a subject in its own right. This, of course, runs contrary to what is promoted in most state-run educational facilities today, which could well have something to do with why we are particularly susceptible to submitting to very often illegitimate authority. This is something discussed by Noam Chomsky in the following talk. That's entitled Education is a System of Indoctrination of the Young. Once again, however, if this tendency to obey orders, whether legitimate or not, from a supposed authority figure is inbuilt in us, then it seems extremely foolish to actively reinforce this tendency. At this point, some may say that a certain level of automatic obedience to authority is a good thing, with perhaps a child crossing the road with a parent, for example. But it is quite another to administer electric shocks to someone to the point of that person losing consciousness, as in the case of the Milgram experiment, for example, because a man in a white lab coat told you to do so. For example, it could be very easily argued by an astutely observant child, having taken a brief account of the environmental destruction that the adult world is engaging in, that they hardly seem like an authority on the subject of sustainability. Granted, this is a sweeping generalization, but a worthwhile objection to raise in the most part, as it would at least help to show a recognition of the general climate of hypocrisy present in the adult world. Free will and choice. Issues pertaining to human behaviour by extension bring up the interesting issue of free will and individualism by default. For if we are so susceptible to environmental influence, then how much of our own lives do we have a choice over? The answer, I think, is both a little and a lot. It's no good thinking that the environment is to blame for the way you are, the actions you take, or the circumstances in which you find yourself, or else you'll likely never rise above your past and overcome adversity. That being said, it's no use thinking that we would be the person we are without previous environmental influence. The choice to take no action seems as much of a choice to take action. Free or not, it does nothing to alter the reality which unfolds from the action you do or do not take. This issue is well explained in the reading of the following essay, Monism and Christianity, by Chapman Cohen, and that is a TZM Global Radio show from June the 5th, 2013, hosted by Ben McLeish. The essay starts at 29 minutes 57 seconds. This paradox is further expressed by Jacques Fresco in the following clip. That's entitled Free Will. The issue of free will is further expanded upon in the following talk by Sam Harris, and that's entitled The Illusion of Free Will, as well as in the following documentary by the BBC Horizon series, The Secret You. Culture Meme 2. We fear change. There is often a good deal of fear involved with sweeping social change, and with good reason. Radical shifts in societal structure have often led to despotism and hardship on a massive scale. North Korea, Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia could all be cited as examples of this, perhaps. So we should understandably proceed with caution. However, such negative connotations are often not met with an equal appreciation of the positive social change that has taken place over the course of human history. Examples range from no longer dying of poor dental hygiene by the age of 25, to the elevation of intellectual freedom in the Renaissance, to the abolishment of slavery, women's rights, etc. Given such changes, it can hardly be said that this knee-jerk, fear-based reaction to social change of any sort is a rational justification for not making the changes which are clearly needed in our current epoch. Whether it be environmental degradation, inequality, global destabilization tendencies, or the ever-increasing rate of technological unemployment, it's easy to see why social change on the sort of scale that the NLRBE outlines makes it at least an idea worthy of serious consideration. It could also be noted that fearing change for the sake of it is to fear the only certainty in life, being that things always have and always will change. What they change to is up to us and contingent upon the actions we take as individuals and collectively in our everyday lives. Culture meme 3. Projection, assumption and culture lag. The general outline and description of the concept of culture lag and how it has worked over the course of history is laid out in the following talk by Ben McLeish. That's Z-Day London 2014, intro video and Ben McLeish. When considering that all we have ever known as a context by which to evaluate social change is the use of a political framework and monetary system, the idea that all of our needs could be met without a price tag in an NLRBE should be expected to be ridiculed or rejected out of hand by most who encounter it. Subsequent assumptions can often be made from this limited perspective regarding the idea, unfortunately. This reaction can be understandably frustrating as it stifles any meaningful and constructive dialogue on the topic of widespread social change. Nonetheless, it is up to those who promote this direction to come to expect such reactions and be prepared to deal with them as maturely and appropriately as possible. This issue is one of effective communication and is dealt with at greater length in the article An Effective Communicative Approach. One point worth noting, however, regarding this type of reaction may be to ask the person in question what they believe to be the most optimal methods to meet human needs technically and sustainably. The answer invariably never comes back with the optimal solution in any area in my experience, so given the opportunity to point out some of the available technological solutions in each area of concern, this then leaves the most important question hanging in the air. That being, so why are we not using these technologies? After all, the monetary market system claims that through the incentive competition provides the best ideas will rise to the surface, overcoming less efficient ones, and thus meeting human need more effectively. If this is the case, then how is it possible for better solutions to exist but not be adopted? An addendum to this point could be that if our current system were adequate at meeting human need, then we would surely not need charities, would we? It's an art to judge where and with whom to bring up such points, but the more responses we have available, the better equipped we will be at communicating the concept of an NLRBE to a wider variety of people and situations more effectively. This particular variety of culture lag is more prominently found in older generations in my personal experience. This is one of the reasons why focusing on delivering this message to a younger audience is a far more effective strategy to adopt. Children do not think that they know everything yet, and do not have many of the mental blockages detailed in this article concerning changing the world for the better. Were they made aware of the tools humanity has developed up to this point to solve these issues, along with an appreciation of the scientific method as a school of thought for everyday life, then as they grow older, they may well be far more likely to find the alternatives proposed via the political and monetary economic arena to be insufficient in addressing social and environmental issues. What might an educational system of shared goals look like? With the need for competition removed by technically alleviating the underlying scarcity and inefficiency inherent to the price system, adults and children alike could be encouraged to flourish in whatever interests them. Whereas today we often erroneously attribute ideas as originating in the individual with concepts such as intellectual property, in an NLRBE we would be more inclined to promote the humble and more factually correct position that without the surrounding culture in which we were reared, our ideas would likely have never come to pass. With such a social condition, there would likely be a greater emphasis on collaboration and humility, making us pleased when our ideas are surpassed, as we would know that our personal and collective well-being just took another step forward into the future. The conclusion of such observations, and indeed of this entire article, could be summed up as follows. Our personal interest must become social interest if we expect to survive and prosper as a species in the long run. Excellently portrayed by Carl Sagan in the following clip, that being pale blue dot. So with this point and others made in this article, please be sure to visit the Action in Education section to see how to go about enacting this much needed change in your local educational institutions. And that's the end of this article and the end of this radio show. I'll be back soon to read the third article, Culture Reflects Education and Education Reflects Culture, in the section Minds in the Making from TZM Education. But in the meantime, take care of yourself, and I'm going to close this radio show the way I opened it, in the hope that we might be able to imagine and, most importantly, create a better future for everyone who exists on this tiny blue dot we call home. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.